Please rise and pay respects to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Megan, you elected to do roll call, please. Board of Trustees.
Trustee Charles. Here. Trustee Colvin. Here. Supervisor Curtis.
Here.
Treasurer Ferrari.
Here.
Trustee Noel.
Here.
Trustee Payne.
Here.
Clerk Wright.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Planning Commission.
I'd like to call over for the Planning Commission of the joint special meeting tonight on August 24th, 2023. If you want to call absent, we're not absent, we're all absent-minded. You want to call the attendance for us? You want me to do it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I can do it. Planning Commissioner Bailey.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Ballard.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Berger.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Hunwick.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Trustee Noel.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Spiz.
Present.
Planning Commissioner Turner.
Here. Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes, I want to call to order the joint meeting of August 24th, Zoning Board of Appeals. If you would take attendance for that.
Chair Bailey.
Here.
Member Butler.
Here.
Member McGalley.
Here.
Member Payne. Here. Member Walters.
Here.
Thank you.
We all three have a quorum. Okay, from the Board of Trustees, item 4A, I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Treasurer Ferrari, a second by Trustee Payne. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, hearing none. Planning Commission.
For the Planning Commission, I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Spiz and supported, I don't remember, Ed Hunwick. Edward, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
4C, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Need to have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, board and commission members for coming in tonight. As we kick this off, we have a presentation, but first I'd like to thank Carlisle Wortman for providing substance for tonight's meeting, since we got here early and we all got to have a nice little supper with them. Thank you very much. Board and commission members, every 5 years, by code, the master plan should be revisited. Tonight is where 2019 was the last year we did a master plan. So as we move forward into 2024, there's some pre-work we wanted to get done. August is a good kickoff and start time. So with that, we are going to do that. And tonight, I'd like to introduce Megan Mason Minock, with Carlisle Wortman, and Mateo Pasalacqua. There he is. Okay, and what we're going to do is go through the purpose of planning to plan the meeting. We're going to review a little bit of the current master plan, current demographics, and land use. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Supervisor Curtis. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think I've been able to meet all of you, either through regular meetings or trainings, but I really want to thank you for taking your time to be here tonight. I recognize that except for the Planning Commission, this is an extra meeting, and as public servants, you have a lot of those to begin with. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to talk about the process of the master plan and what you, as the leadership of the township, feel should be part of that process. And so to set the stage, what we'd like to do is to, as Supervisor Curtis said, talk a little bit about what a master plan is, what your current master plan says, what your demographics are, so what the big data of the world says about you, which could be wrong, and then also to have some time tonight to hear from you that based on those, what do you think should be in the master plan process? Because it can be, you have guidelines in the Planning Enabling Act through the state of Michigan, but a master plan process can be very simple and short, or it can be very long and complicated, and somewhere in between. And it really should be tailored to what your community needs at that time, and so we wanted to spend some time with you tonight talking about that. To begin with, though, I wanted to talk about what a master plan is, and it's simply this: the roadmap for the best path from a known present into an unknown future. So you know what your situation is today, but it's hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. If you've ever if you've ever been a sports fan, you know what your team did last year, but you're not sure what they're going to do this season. And their coach is trying to figure out what to do with those players that he or she has now, but they may be making decisions based on what those people had done in the past. And it's the same for a master plan. And so why, as a municipality, would you take all this time and effort and money to do that? One is to anticipate change, to look at what changes are coming, and how can we get prepared for them. Another thing is to create predictability. If you're constantly reacting to what's happening in terms of that change, and you don't have some guidelines, then it's an unpredictable place for you as leaders, for your constituents, and also for the people who are coming to your community, either to live here, to build here, to play here. Also, the master plan looks for you to use physical, natural, social, and fiscal resources wisely. So the Planning Enabling Act actually lists all those things out and asks that you look at them and how do you plan for them to have a stable community and a predictable future. And that master plan should create a vision for the future. And when we've looked at your master plan, and we've been your planners for almost 2 decades, that vision hasn't changed substantially since 2009. And that was one of the reasons that we wanted to start this process with you here, because since that vision hasn't changed substantially since 2009, and I know that several of you were here in the township at that time, think about what it was and how it's changed since then and how it's remained the same. And does a vision that was created in 2009, parts of it may still be valid, but parts of it may not ring true anymore. And also, one of the things a master plan does is it protects the environment and quality of life. Not only why it lays out the master plan, but then in terms of each of your boards and commissions making decisions for rezonings, for variances, for special land uses, for site plans. Your boards and commissions look back at this document and look at it for guidance. And I know from working in Oxford Township over the past 9 months, you very much treasure your natural resources, and you treasure what's here in Oxford, and have looked to protect those, but also want to know that change may come and growth may come, and you want to do that in a responsible fashion. The master plan, this quote is from the Michigan Planning and Enabling Act, and I know I keep saying it over and over, but it's the founding document from which the powers that you have to plan come from. And it's the only official document that sets forth an agenda for the achievement of land use goals and policies. And so it's a general statement of those goals, and it looks to synchronize those public and private improvements. And often one leads to another, or one may keep off the other. If you're expanding a sewer line, for instance, that's going to change what type of development will come to someplace. If you have a recreation area that is changing, that may be sold, or a golf course that may be sold, that's going to change what's happening. It also provides a clear indication of the township's direction for the future. And this is important because if you don't guide what your future is, somebody else will. Whether it's developers, whether it's residents, whether it's also sometimes things go to court and then a judge gets to decide. And I've been doing planning consulting for dozens of communities for over 20 years. Whenever a judge decides, usually nobody's happy except for the judge. So the master plan is your opportunity to set out what the community should look like and what its guiding values should be. It also serves as an educational tool and gives a clear indication of what the township's direction is. So you have people who move in and people who move out, and people who come and purchase property, and maybe people who sell property. So no community is static, people move in and out. And that master plan, that's an educational tool to give to someone and say, this is what we value, this is what our vision is. It also serves as an aid in daily decision making. And I think I've talked about how that affects you and your boards and commissions, but also for your staff, some of whom are here, and for your consultants. We go back to those all the time to look at that document to see what it says. And finally, it provides that statutory foundation about any zoning decision. So any site plan, any special land use, any rezoning, these are all zoning decisions, and they are based on your master plan. So that master plan isn't up to date. You're making decisions that's based on something that doesn't reflect what's currently in your community. There are lots of elements to a master plan. I put several up here, and I know that this was in your packet. You are not limited to this. We've had communities that have done green infrastructure plans, food systems plans, natural resources. Also, I know that you have your safety path plan, and that's been an exhibit of the master plan and would continue to be so. And one of the things we want to hear from you tonight is what are those elements that should be in this update of the master plan? Also, how should it look? What information should be there? We're looking at a master plan for the 2020s. Most people don't pick up a book anymore. You'll see it most people will see it on a computer or maybe on a phone. So what should this document look like visually? How should it be structured to be that tool for your community? And the way that we look at master planning is that there's a process that has 3 whats. The first is time to say what is important to your community, and then talking to not only leadership, but also to the community about what's important to them. And then bringing that information together, and then once that is gathered and then presented, to ask leadership, specifically the Planning Enabling Act, ask the Planning Commission to do the heavy lifting on this, as to say, okay, so what? Why are these issues important, and how do we prioritize them? And then finally, after you have that prioritization and you know what you want to work on, say, okay, now what? What do we need to do? So tonight, we really want you to tell us what. So to define those whats. And what we're going to do in order to set the stage for that, and my colleague Mateo is going to do the heavy lifting here on that, is review the master plan and the community profile review. And then I'm going to ask you to do some brainstorming and brainwriting, which if you see me in the future, you will know as any sort of community engagement work, or if I come to your board, I'm going to make you work. Usually there's homework for you. Some voting amongst you so that we can know what priorities are, and then discussion. And then also, you know, as you've seen on your agenda, Supervisor Curtis has asked the Township Board to make a decision tonight based on this discussion about what level of master planning to look at and to authorize the Planning Commission, assisted by staff and consultants, to go forward. Any questions on what's a master plan and the master plan in general? So for those of you who have gone through this before, did I miss anything?
No, you've covered it very well. I think a lot of people don't understand when these master plans were created 20 and 30 years ago, we were not the community we are today. And we've slipped on a few things that we need to look at relevant to what we've done in size by the number of people that live here. And things change because people want local needs. And so in the industrial group, that's one thing, but in the commercial activity group, You know, people don't want to shop all the way in Auburn Hills, or they don't want to go to Rochester, they don't want to drive to Lapeer, they want to shop locally. So I think it's important to bring out those needs that we have with population that's growth. Because when I look at this population chart right here, it's so far out of whack. If Mr. London probably has the numbers better in front of him than myself, I think probably for this year already, we've done over 1,000 permits
Yeah.
and everything. So we're growing at a very rapid rate now that we didn't have previously, you know, see even 4 years ago. So that's important to me, to see what we need on the commercial aspect side, and where's the best fit for that. We took some of the office properties, like office professional type uses, and we rezoned those in the previous context of years past, and we started depleting those properties, and now we don't have many left. So I think it's important to maybe look into the aspect of creating some new areas for that. Oxford's loaded with sand and gravel mining operations that are all gonna be reclaimed, and we're talking thousands of acres. Now, can it be done?
Mr. Berger.
I'm
you're
done.
Stealing Mateo
Yeah,
thunder.
you're stealing my thunder.
Let Megan go on,
Well,
Tom.
that's part of my opinion.
Yeah. Let Megan go on,
That's
Tom.
our opinion.
Well, and I'm gonna make sure that everybody has a chance to share their
I'll be
opinion.
done then.
But we're gonna let,
Thank you.
I'd like to have Mateo just talk just for a little bit. All right.
Good evening, my name is Mikhail Pasalakwa, I work with Megan and Carla Wortman. I've met a few of you, but tonight this is the first time for some, so nice to meet you. As Megan had said, you know, a master plan is one of a community's most important tools, engaging development demand or interest, whether it has it or not, but it is a very useful tool. So we wanted to put together some statistics and information based on demographics, population projections, all that fun stuff, to kind of paint that picture of what the next 5 to 15 years could look like for the township. So here you can see just a basic population graph. You know, from 1980 to 2020, you more than doubled in population. Your big population boom kind of came between 1990 and 2010, which is pretty typical for the, you know, the Metro Detroit region and the northern and western townships. So this is SEMDOG's projection, Mr. Berger's favorite slide, of where your population is projected to go by 2050. And so right now you're hovering at about 19,000 residents, and SEMCOG's looking at you being at around 21,000 by 2050. I mean, even with my short time at the township, the current development interests that you have could have you hitting this number in 5 to 7 years, realistically. And so what's interesting about that is it puts the 2050 projection back on the table. What does that look like? If we're gonna be that far ahead of our projection, what's the next 20 years after that gonna look like? And so this looks at some population age group changes over 10 years from 2010 to 2020. The two trends that kind of popped out to us was you've definitely had some growth in your 10 to 30 age group range, and this is an important time for families. This is kind of when roots start to take a little bit and you kind of pick the place that they might be for a while. Another indicator where you increased in age group range was 45 to 80. And this is not a township thing, this is a national thing. The population's aging. And it's a very important consideration for your master plan because these age groups require some similar services, some different services, some more from public entities, some more from private. So as you start to look at your future land use and your master plan and things of that nature, you want to consider what are the services that we're going to need to take care of and attract these demographics. This slide's really just a compilation of some demographic and economic information, you know, looking at education, income, housing tenure, values, it's all good. And it all shows a very stable economy, and it shows an economy that is going to attract development interest based on a lot of these numbers. This is something we do for all of our, you know, master plan considerations in townships is we take a look at the census tracts that make up the area. And even though the geography can get a little screwy, we try to look for is there a story to be told here. When we looked at Oxford, the one that kind of popped up to us was the median year for structures built. And you can kind of see, you know, you've got an older stock kind of in this lower ring, but then up here, more so in these areas, is where the building structures are younger. And I don't think this is any major surprise to anyone. So this is a comparison of your 2009 existing land use map and the 2022 existing land use map the county has. With the exception of some minor changes in these areas where it kind of toggled back and forth between some low-density residential and vacant. The interesting thing about this slide is that there's not a lot of change here. And the point with that being is the next time there will be. The whole change is going to change, and that when we look at 2022 comparatively out to 2032 or whatever time range you pick, the maps will not be this similar. Again, looking at existing land uses, this takes a look at those land uses by category, by acre, and change over a period of time. So here we're looking at 2015 to 2020. Here's all of your uses, your timeframes, your change. Most of your residential uses increased over that 5-year period. What's interesting is that your retail was stagnant. So given the time frame, a lot of this I think can be attributed to e-commerce, but what's interesting to consider is this does include 2020. COVID does have some influence in this, but it's not the majority. It's not just saying COVID did that. This was happening before COVID. So that equation is continuing to change. And so that's another reason why what we're doing is important, because we're gonna have to account for what retail do we want to attract, how can we attract it? Because the age-old equation of so many residential units begets so much retail is kind of out the window at this point. The other thing that we looked at for uses was your golf course and your extractive. They haven't changed, but we feel that this acreage will be the most in play over the next 5 to 15 years for development, likely residential. If you were to even just take the golf course, this 730 acres, and dedicate it to residential in the next 5 years using your current land use or ordinance regulations, your low-density single-family housing is probably gonna get you somewhere around 300 units. Your higher densities could get you 700. That accounts back to that, you're gonna be at the 21,000 population mark well before anybody thought. This is just taking a look at the neighbors. Addison and Brandon Township were pretty stagnant over a 10-year range of 2010 to 2020 with their population. However, Orion Township in that time frame increased by 9%. Oxford, you guys increased by 10% in that time frame. Even Metamora grew by 3.5%. And I think the story here is, access to infrastructure. You have I-10, you have I-75 just north of the map boundary, you have I-69. This is going to play another role in that demand in your community. What else is interesting about this is, in the next 10 years, when we do 2020 to 2030, Orion Township isn't going to grow by 10%. They're relatively built out. And so all of the development interest in that area is going to naturally make its way north. You could grow by 10% from 2020 to 2030. So this is taking a look at your existing future land use map, and you guys know it, it's got all of the classifications for the different types of uses. And as Megan kind of alluded to, and I see it in my day-to-day work at the Township Hall, developers who are interested in doing different projects will reference this map and reference what it is called out as in the map. And it may be to aid their case, or it may be to make a point that there's a conflict, but it comes up. So kind of the point being that your master plan, your future land use designations are a very important tool you have to shape the development demand that is coming your way. Speaking of development demand that is coming your way, in that earlier slide we were kind of looking at extractive and golf course land uses. So these red zones show where those activities currently exist in general. And this is really just putting eyes to the acreage. These are kind of those chunks of land that we were referring to that are going to draw some interest from development. And you can kind of see that they are clustered around where current development is taking place.
Mateo, I see a lot of neck stretching to try to see the slides. Is it okay if we blew some chairs up around so they could see the slides? I'm sorry. We have interested public, and it's kind of hard for them to see it. Now you got to turn. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I see everybody leaning over trying to see, and is that better?
Yeah, so we're looking, you know, kind of these areas as potential demand in the next 5 to 15 years, again, likely residential. And so a big part of what is going to facilitate some of that interest is infrastructure. So what this map shows is the yellow boundary is your current water and sewer service. The purple boundary that kind of lays over that is the primary urban service area that was set up in your last master plan. It was kind of a guide for where should infrastructure go and be invested in. You've realized that. That's happened. What this arrow indicates is the potential for water and sewer to expand up Lapeer Road, which is probably the most likely corridor to receive that type of improvement. But then also these red parcels are larger parcels that will draw the interest of prospective development, and that infrastructure is going to be important for them. So,
And just to piggyback on that, these red parcels were identified in your last update of your master plan. And I think they were identified all the way back to 2009. And in every update, what you've done, and what we recommend you continue to do, is to look at all those parcels and say, okay, which ones are going to be in play in the next 5 to 10 years? Which ones might be in play in 15 to 30? And then in your plan, you'll see that there's a corresponding number. You'll see a corresponding number. It corresponds to a table, which then has instructions on what could happen. For instance, you know, there might be some recreation areas that we're seeing to be in play. And then it has some instructions about what the township's vision was for that area during that master plan update. Obviously, there's not 32 of them, but we would recommend looking at that chart and this map again in a comprehensive way.
So with that, this is kind of my last part. It's really all just to put this information in front of you to say that, you know, development interest is going to continue. It's probably going to intensify to some degree, which kind of outlines the importance of the exercise you're about to go through. Yeah, you know what?
Perfect.
So, what we would like you to do is identify the what's in terms of what must be in the master plan. I know that we have some public here, so public, if you would like to participate in this exercise, we have index cards, so write your ideas on that to submit them in. Elected and appointed officials, I'm going to ask you to write on sticky notes, and I'm going to ask you to write one idea per sticky note. You're going to hand them into Mateo and I, and we are going to then group them according to topic, and then put some topics up on the wall in terms of where you as a group, or maybe not as a group, have ideas on what should be in the master plan. And those what's are things like, what is important to our community? So, Mr. Berger identified that retail and industrial is important to the community. Why are these issues important? So, and I think that was Mr. Berger, you indicated that people's needs aren't being served at this time. Well, what do we need to do? Well, maybe on what do we need to do in the master plan, look if we can expand retail or industrial uses, to plan them in places maybe where they were planned before and took offline, or maybe whatnot. So what should we discuss? Also, I've heard from a member of this group that a build-out analysis, so really looking at how many houses could be developed and what that population would be a useful exercise. So it could be as detailed as that, or it could be as broad as we should talk to X amount of people, or we should look, well, the master plan is fine, or I like this aspect, don't touch it. So my challenge to you is to fill out at least 3 sticky notes with a what, and hand them to Mateo and I, and we'll give you the next 5-10 minutes. So you will take some, I'll take some. Yeah, at least 3.
At least three.
You can have more.
How many would you
Pyramid, please.
3? Yep.
More than 3 strikes, you're out. I don't think I gave you enough.
important issues.
Yeah. 3 whats.
3 whats.
It's not 5. Some people, I've gotten 10, 15 from people.
Jack wants 10.
One at a time.
One idea for sticky notes. That really helps us as facilitators.
How detailed do you want us to get? Or how vague can I be?
You can be as detailed or as vague as you want.
Topics you want covered? Any particular topics you want
No,
covered?
it's you. What topics do you want covered?
Okay.
Did you get some?
If you want 6.
You want 6? So if you have any questions for Mateo or I, just shoot up a hand, we can come by, or we'll come by and we'll pick up them as well.
I have some of mine.
I see. Nice.
I wish I had 6.
Thank you.
I'll write one.
It's even more interesting.
You'll see redundancy. Butler, we don't want you thinking too different. You know, don't get too hard now on us.
I'm thinking about designing it all, right?
I can take a few if you've got them already. Here we go. Thank you.
No. Can I have 20 more? He said. I see.
Very
Can I take any
detailed.
from you, gentlemen?
I got 2, but I don't know if they're not.
Not yet? Okay. All right. You are productive.
I'm what?
Productive.
Oh.
Like no state sales tax, or excuse me, it's gonna be hard to tell. But you guys talk about this stuff too, so you're in a larger school down there in Township.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
Yeah, yeah.
following it through.
I did 5. That's enough.
I think it's more than everybody. You're gonna see redundancy. Oh, I put that, that was my first one. I've been dealing with my wife now.
Much information, just a few ideas.
No worries, thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't
All right.
pass up to it.
hospitals.
How's she doing, Tom?
She's not good yet.
Final thoughts on sticky notes before we
I was
go
telling
through them.
him it's gonna take
We
an hour
paint,
just to
right?
go through your Post-it notes. I know exactly
Used to
right.
have for years. Never understood why it was ever painted.
Oh, you're welcome.
You know why? Wasn't in the work order back in 2000. 2004, I'm sorry. I
Next
said,
one's
Tom,
two-parter.
Pelosa. I said, why is this
One,
not done?
and there's two.
Oh, it's not. Mother, may I?
Folks out in the public comment. So, Mateo, can you do me a favor? Can you write
Slam it in
topics
jail.
as we decide on them, on this, and then we may need to move over to there after a while. Okay, so. That was unhappy. So there's definitely some themes. We group things by topic. So all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, deal with retail. Whether it's retail needs, tracking retail, expanded retail, commercial, property, retained,
That doesn't go there.
no, that doesn't go there. That goes down here. Unique shopping with quality parking, limited retail, focus on what is needed. So based on that, and there's some conflicting things in there, but I would say a topic that needs to be in the master plan process is retail. So if you could write that down. Does everybody agree with that? That synopsis? All right. Also on that, we had a lot on medical. So medical needs, get a hospital, hospitals and medical facilities, possible care clinic, etc., medical for the aging population. So medical needs, and I know that you had a hospital development that's been in flux for a long time. So would you agree that medical/hospital should be part of the planning process?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the next one. No, none of us are getting any younger, are we? Another theme that came up was infrastructure. And this might be split out into two parts, so I'm gonna have to ask for the group's wisdom. So it says expand sewer infrastructure plan, adequate water sewer for residential areas, more sewer access and stormwater, thank you. And then there was a very long one, which it's
I still got ink in my pen.
Basically, extend infrastructure, we should concentrate in smaller industrial commercials and then use major concerns and use the core cities that have major infrastructure in place. So design the smaller rings. So that was really looking at infrastructure and how you plan it. Okay, so would everybody agree that we're talking about infrastructure in general, or do we need to split out water and sewer separately?
General.
I think it was, personally, I think separately.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they have to work with each other, but I think you have to have one of the infrastructure first before you can do the next one.
So this is what I'm asking Mateo to do, and you're gonna, everyone on CBA, Township Board, and Planning Commission are gonna get dots to vote in terms of priorities in just a second. So if you could write down infrastructure, and then underneath that, put like a sub-bullet of water sewer.
Sewer you have to hook up, water you don't have to.
Yes.
Neither together.
Okay, so there, okay. Next theme, industrial. Expanded industrial, utilize industrial properties, industrial needs. And then there was a very specific thing about the setback of industrial on Lapeer Road with a recommendation that it should be quite far. So for the folks on industrial, is it the industrial use in general, where it is, or the design?
I'm in general, but
Uh-huh.
when I put my infrastructure, water sewers on there, but I think roads also somehow need to be in plan. Even though I know Township doesn't really have oversight of that, but you need to have a relationship with the road commissioner and everybody else, because
Okay.
that burden is going to come as you develop.
Okay,
So think ahead on roads.
okay, thank you.
Okay, and my comment about I don't know what the setback is for M24, I just don't wanna see a lot of factories right on M24.
Okay, great.
That's my thing, that's why I put
Okay,
that.
yeah. So, but that's a good thing to have in the master plan no matter what.
Right.
Maybe the setback is very big at this point, but if you want to maintain that, it's good to have the master plan to say that. So I think maybe we put down industrial and then a sub-bullet of design and a sub-bullet of where and how.
And Megan, too, we should also look at what type of industrial we want to court. The way Michigan was
Yes.
first set up, back in the days, all your big ones, your GMs, your Fords, they're the ones that go to the inner cities. Detroit, Pontiac, Flint, Lansing. We're supposed to be this supplement to that, the guys that help make those products.
Tier 2.
Exactly, that's what we're
Right.
supposed to be. That's how it was all designed.
Originally,
GM's not
yes.
supposed to be out here. It's supposed to be in Detroit. We allow suppliers, the tier 2s, like Jack said, to support them.
Why not tier 1?
Tier 1. Because they have the infrastructure. They're not tearing up green space.
So this sounds like a great topic to talk about in the master plan, not necessarily right here and agree upon. But so then it's not only where and how, where it's what time.
I'd rather have professional than professional.
So, okay. Other things, okay. I had a great big thing here, which a lot of it has to deal with parks. So parks, pathways, activity center, parks and recreation, possible campground at Oakwood Park, recreation development, focus on all age groups, improve community center, pool, track. So you are in the middle of a Parks and Rec plan, which will address some of this, but it can also go into the master plan as well, and what that might be. So Parks and Recreation?
Yep.
Okay, Parks and Recreation is a topic, but then also in these are things about open space and where it needs to be protected. Specifically, I have a protect horse country exclamation point, which I definitely been told that since I got here day one. And then retain rural character in Northeast Quadrant, that's horse country. right? Development, development of more parks goes here, open space, green environment, yeah, and then that is recreation, that says community programs. So definitely that protection of open space is something that wants to be, that I'm hearing that wants to be maintained in the master plan. And that should be part of the process, so we talk about it.
And we
Okay.
can do that dialogue has to be happening too as to, do we have enough parks?
Do we have enough
Some people
parks?
do feel we have enough. Some of us feel, no, we can always have more.
Okay, all right.
Open space.
Oh, I would say Parks and Rec,
Say green space.
and then green space,
All that stuff.
yeah.
As bullets.
No, green space is on its own.
Okay.
Parks and Rec is on its own. And what I'm hearing under Parks and Rec is, how much? And just, so you can put a sub-bullet underneath that of a question mark.
Oh, green space questions?
No, Parks and Rec, how much? Thank you.
Yep.
All right, where are we? Had some ideas on senior housing. Future ideas for senior population, senior center, dog park, meet needs and take care of seniors and older population. Growth is expected in our township. Yes,
I would like to expand on that one, I didn't write it down. The senior population is growing, which the data shows, but there's a drop-off.
yeah.
So as part of our plan, we need to be planning, if we're gonna put more senior housing, more this, what do we do when that drop-off comes? Are you gonna be able to
Repurpose the
repurpose it to
building.
some?
I'd say repurpose.
Yes. So that's other reasons.
Okay, that's a good point. So
And how much of growth is gonna happen?
if you can put seniors, and then underneath that, say,
Just like the
senior
Chrysler Building's
housing.
supposed to be long.
And then we can get into gradations of that during that.
No way.
Then we had controlled development patterns surrounded by traditional neighborhood development, controlled development, concern for increased population and traffic on 24, and then migration versus exodus of population in terms of geopolitical. I feel like the controlled development patterns go together, and that there's a need to look at how, maybe the question is, how should growth be managed?
That's a good question.
I'm seeing not, okay, so if you could put up that, how could growth be managed? And then the migration versus exodus of population, geopolitical. Yes,
Mine.
yeah,
That was mine. I mean, with a lot of the politics going on these days, Oakland County is shifting demographically. There are gonna be people that are gonna be leaving, which you thought were staying, and other people coming in, so we need to be somehow cognizant of that.
okay. So cognizant, looking at population changes, not only
Right, I mean, 'cause-
demographics, but geopolitical.
Because the people that can move will move.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that can't move will have to stay. As they raise taxes and everything else go up, you're gonna see a shift.
Okay.
Almost guarantee it.
Okay,
And then Mike, with that, how do we not be ignored? That's my issue. West and north is gonna start getting ignored. We know that. How do we not have that happen?
Yeah, that's, I mean,
That's
that's a
political.
different argument, discussion, but I just say in the planning of the population in our trend chart, because I know based on the trend chart, we don't agree with SEMCOG,
yeah,
but we need to keep some of these other things in the back of our minds that before we say, okay, instead of going 21,000, let's not predict 25, because there's gonna be somewhat of an exodus.
okay.
As
so
part of
you-
that, plus the senior drop-off is coming, right?
Yeah.
That's also gonna be a reduction.
And something that we can do also, in part of the master plan, is actually look for paid data that then deals with kind of that, they call it a mosaic landscape
Mhm.
of who's the population types who's attracted to your community, and they predict will come to your community in the next 5 years, and who will stay. And so that can definitely be part of the master plan, is getting that data and then looking at it and then planning based off of that. So there were a couple others that were one-offs. I think because we've gone over industrial, right? Did we go over
Yeah, yep.
industrial? Yeah.
Where would you
Um,
like?
So somebody said quality schools, which absolutely, that
Why are you
plays
looking at me?
into
I'm not in
what
that anymore.
development happens or who stays in your community. You don't have a lot of control over this. So we can put it on the list, but I'm gonna say that there's not a lot of play, that there's not an impact that the township can have on this.
Does our current master plan have anything to do with schools in it? Do we mention it anywhere?
not that I saw.
Okay.
What they would do is they would plan for an institutional land use, and where they would
Yeah, I
be,
understand
and then,
But I don't know if we mentioned specifically anything to do with education in schools.
yeah, and again, I've been doing this 20 years, the only time that it's been part of that is when, school districts were merging and they knew that they would have, excess property that the schools would be looking to dispose of. Or it was a goal that the city would work with the public schools in order to,
Yeah, Warren's a great example.
for them to further, that their success is linked. So,
Well, I think the township does have, not necessarily control, but they do have some influence with the population that you're attracting. Because if you're attracting younger families, things like that, those people are gonna vote for millages, things like that will support a school. If you're attracting more of the senior housing, they're not voting for millages, and your schools are gonna go in the toilet.
Well, that's an opinion on the floor.
but we're all gonna get to vote, so we'll know your priorities. All right. An attractive and functional downtown. Again, I'll put downtown up there, but that's not something that you as a township have a lot of control on. So can you write downtown up, please? But definitely what happens in that downtown affects your community again. So, and
We're not mutually exclusive.
no, you're symbiotic. I was gonna say codependent, but that sounded wrong, right? Okay.
Alrighty then.
Yeah. So you have some natural synergies already. So mining, long-term plans, when will they reclaim? That's a good point, and if we could just put mining reclamation up there. Somebody put jobs that can be a long-time career. And that maybe can be part of the industrial and what type. So actually, I'm gonna
I'd
move
say that's
that.
more professional.
Oh, you're thinking more professional?
It wasn't mine, but that's mine.
But, okay, I'll put it kind of as an outlier. And then maybe if you could put up there Mateo Jobs. Hospitality, these two kind of seem to go together. Hospitality and bed and breakfast, and then there was one about making Oxford a destination, like a vacation destination. So, maybe if we could put, just vacation
Those days are
destination.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those days are over.
Well, then don't vote for it. So, and then I think that was it. Did anybody have, oh no, there's future transportation routes and roads, future right-of-way and roads, Thomas Hammer Lake, Lakeville, Westlake, and then major traffic plans. And then we're concerned for increased population and traffic on 24. So again, that to me says traffic. We have roads and infrastructure, but maybe put traffic management up there as well. I understand again, road commission doesn't have, road commission controls. Township can influence a little bit, can help sometimes with grants and millages or bringing extra money to the table, but you can also lay some markers out in your master plan if you want, for goals that you want, and sometimes that helps. All right. Of what people said, did anybody miss anything? And I'm gonna start, did I miss anything? I'm gonna start this way and work around. Anything that I missed from anybody?
Pretty comprehensive.
Oh, yes. We need to have political courage to seek necessary safety path easements regardless of condemnation or takings needing to take place. Thank you. Safety paths. Yeah.
Who did that?
So, okay, Ruth, and then that's also on its own. Going around, I saw your hand.
I put one up there, it's not specific to the topic, but all of us are, I guess, somewhat involved in, say, in the know to a lot of these things. But there's a lot of people in the public, and thank you everybody here that came, but I would like to get a lot more public input on this stuff. I understand,
Just to start,
that just
we-
was mine, and I both pointed, it's a lot more public input.
Thank you, I missed that one.
Yeah, because part of the plan is, we're gonna vote on how deep into the public we wanna go and how much we wanna spend on going into the depth.
I
Yep.
just want to make sure there's.
Yeah, that will be a decision tonight.
Yeah. So, all right, Mateo, anything that is on this, anything that we missed that you feel is important to be in the master plan process that we haven't covered?
What about the stuff in the audience?
Yeah, what about the photos? So, let's see.
What was the comment? I couldn't hear you.
They asked what the public said, so I'm gonna read it out.
Sure.
Use density, traffic resources, aesthetics of impact of development. I think we've covered that in a variety of places. Protection of existing habitats, green space, treatment of runoff and lake water pollution. Development needs not to impact lakes or surrounding wetlands. So I'm gonna put water quality up here.
What are these for?
Vote,
Oh. Where are they?
prioritize your, I would guess.
Oh,
She'll let us know.
Thank you.
I just, what's her,
Next slide.
Sustainable development that
Voting.
preserves existing property, look and feel. For example, no high-rise buildings, apartments that overshadow existing areas or growth that overly congest. Already, person traffic heavy without adequate infrastructure and expansion prior to growth. Should have brought my reading glasses. Maintain wildlife and lake streams from pollutants. I think we've covered that. Maintain residential areas separate from commercial. Did we cover that?
No, we didn't, but it's a good idea.
Okay, so if you can put on there, Mateo, separate residential from commercial. Preservation of land and water, smart management, green infrastructure, green corridors, invasive species management, and then survey community for comments and input to master plan. Do you have, maybe, can you put community engagement there too? Okay. These all came from the audience. So thank you, audience. We're not gonna take comment at this point. We're gonna have public comment at the end of the meeting. So public, if you could just hold your comment till the end, when it's on the agenda for you.
Please explain, there's gotta be more work with the
Yeah.
public involvement.
Yeah, and there's gonna be a lot more work with the public involved. This is not the only chance. This is just the very, very, very beginning. Okay. So, here and there. Mr. Ballard?
And I apologize because I'm maybe the least experienced here in this whole bunch. But I do just have a couple questions before we kind of do this. And so for clarification, we look at and review the master plan every 5 years. That's correct, right?
Right.
Okay. And we can do it at any depth we want every 5 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so based on the charts that you're showing, and I know that some people have a little more experience with the charts than I have, and it shows that what is the estimated population increase between today and 2050? Was it approximately 2,000 residents?
About 10%.
So
Now to 2050, they were projecting an additional 2,000 residents.
So we're looking at let's see, so in the next 30 years, they're projecting another 2,000 residents in the next 30 years.
That's what SEMCOG is. And
Okay.
so they're a council of governments throughout southeastern Michigan, and they look at Livingston, Oakland, Washtenaw, Monroe, and Wayne, St. Clair counties. And what they look at, they look at, sometimes their projections are not the best because they're looking at what happened in the past 5-10 years on building permits.
And so, one other question that I have that you said, and once again, I apologize, I don't have the experience here on some of this, but the master plan or the vision hasn't changed since 2009?
Not substantially, no.
So there hasn't been a major change in it, okay? And can anybody else maybe can fill me in on why there hasn't been a major change with it?
I feel like from what I've been told and what I looked at in the plan is that the people who were looking at it at those times felt like it didn't need to be updated, or there could have been, also my experience with other communities is there's been a lack of funds. And so this, if you do a lot of community engagement and if you really go into depth or you opening it up. Also, this requires you as leadership to be vulnerable. It requires you to go to the community, to listen to them, be willing to hear what they say, and then respond. And sometimes you're gonna say yes, and sometimes you're gonna say no. And sometimes you're gonna say maybe, and that all influences what gets in the plan. And just to answer one more question I think people might have, how the plan process goes is that consultants and staff usually help to write it. Planning Commission reviews it. When they feel like the full draft is ready, they then say to the township board, we feel like this is ready to go to adjacent communities. It's required by state law that a draft of the master plan go to all adjacent communities, and the only body that can release it is the township board. And then after 63 days, you have a public hearing at the planning commission level, after you get all these feedback back from adjacent communities, which is not binding, by the way. And then the planning commission recommends and the township board approves, unless the township board decides that they just want the planning commission to do
What's the
that.
timeline, do you think?
So this would take a year, and if you wanted to do, it would take at least a year, and if you wanted to do in-depth with community engagement, it would probably take a year to a year and a half. Because when you're talking about that, what's important to our community, and now what we're going to do, it takes some time to go out to the community, to hear it, to bring it back to the planning commission, to make some decisions and things like that.
Are you looking for a total rewrite, or do you think comprehensive, or, I know we just can't scathe over the top anymore.
I think you have some great elements in your current plan. Like that map that has all the different areas that are in play. I think that probably what you have as your future land use categories are solid. I think where you need to make some decisions are likely around what your growth boundary is and how that looks. And then also, if you feel like there are deficiencies in your township where you want to attract retail or attract employers or attract a hospital, then you need to have a more proactive master plan that plans for those uses and also gives direction to township staff and current and future officials about what the priorities are and how to achieve those. So you could be a lot more, and your implementation plan could be much more detailed. That's my opinion. So, Mr. Ballard, are all your questions answered?
Yes, right this second, 100%.
Okay, Mr. Bailey.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but they're projecting 2,000 more residents in the next 20, 25 years. But we saw a 6,500 increase in the last 25 years. That says we're going backwards.
And so, again, it's SEMCOG, and what they're basing it on is that they're assuming that your land uses aren't changing. So they're probably assuming that all your extractive is gonna remain as extractive. They're probably assuming that your golf courses are gonna remain golf courses. What we saw as consultants and what we see every day at the township by the developers who are coming in and inquiries that we're getting is that we think that you will probably more often in the next 10 years have that same growth rate that you've had. But it's gonna be in new and surprising places because it will be in places that used to be extraction, where mines are being reclaimed, that land's being reclaimed. Or it will be golf courses or recreation areas that are privately held.
Okay.
And also, as that sewer goes up, M24, I mean, you're gonna, just that availability of the 1 mile sewer that you're putting in, that is gonna spur development in that area, because all of a sudden, if I'm building there, I can fill up that land a lot more and a lot cheaper, because I don't have to put a septic field in for my restaurant and worry about, if it gets clogged with too much grease, am I gonna have to pull the whole thing out and things like that. So those are things that we see where to be frank, I think SEMCOG's projections are wrong because they're looking at such a big scale of all of these different municipalities that they don't go into the depth that's necessary to do a good projection. And to their credit, they probably aren't able to.
I brought that up to SEMCOG with Chris Barnett. What right now their snapshot is, Orion is growing. So that's where everybody's going to. What's in actuality is Orion's almost built out. People are coming to us. So you're right, that number looks low. And I would tell you all day it's wrong. Just by the number of people that come to us and say, we want to do this. Can we do this? Where's your sewer? Where's your water? So they also take into consideration, we are built out on water and sewer lots. How many sewer lots do we have left?
Jeez,
100?
probably a little more because of the vacant
130?
developments.
Yeah, 130 lots. That's all the homes that can be serviced, the vacant land with water and sewer, about 130. So they look at that and they say, well, you can't grow. But with Orion being built out, people want to come here.
Jack, we buy extra capacity in that line?
No, we have capacity for thousands.
Okay, so Mr. Spitz, you had your hand up.
Mine was more of a procedural question, because we got these nice little dots we want us to put on there.
Yeah.
Are we putting the cart before the horse a little bit before we get public
Yeah.
input? That's my only thought. I mean, all great ideas and good talking points that gets the public started to talk. But
Well-
our priorities, now we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves a little bit. That's just my thought.
Yes.
So the reason for the dots is to see, we have a lot, and we would be happy to go and do this, all of it. But if, when we give you the dots, and it's not voting and to say this is an absolute must, we're gonna take all this information and everything there, but we wanna see where your priorities are at this point in time, to help guide us to say, okay, where, what do we spend more time in, and things like that. And we're gonna go back to the planning commission with a scope of work.
One thing I want to mention is when you talk about water and sewer, a lot of the sewer expansion is being done right now to protect. We are headwaters of the Clinton River, Paint Creek, Flint River, and a lot of these subdivisions have to be sewered. Otherwise, we have them now that are built in 1910 that are on septics, and they're polluting those headwaters. So in order to take care of it, you need sewer. If you get sewer, you get growth. So you have to balance this out. When you look at industrial, they need sewer. But we also need sewer to protect the green space and the quality of water.
And this isn't saying, this is what the plan will be about. These are saying, these are the topics that we're gonna talk about
need to talk
with the
about it.
community, with the planning commission, with the township board, as we go through the plan. This is not voting on, I want this to change. This is what we're gonna talk about. So that's a gradation.
And I hear you there, but I'm still, because this is just all of us putting ideas out there. Oh, good, all of a sudden, completely different.
Yes,
And
we
change
could.
our course of action. So
This-
I hate to see you guys go down this path and all of a sudden, we're doing a 180 with the public.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, crap, we all agree.
And-
We need to go this way.
What I would recommend then is you put 2 or 3 dots on community engagement. 'Cause
I put 6.
Okay, and in terms of that, you can put as many of your dots wherever you want. We just want to see your priorities. Please don't buy dots from other people. I've had that happen. So that's the only rule I ask. Okay, I'm gonna take.
I was just gonna sell you some.
I feel like there was a hand up down here. Okay,
I can agree with what Mike had said. We gotta be careful when we become an echo chamber.
right.
That's what we really gotta be careful of. That doesn't become, an echo chamber. We're just sitting talking to each other.
Right.
And that's why I agree with Mike. We've gotta kinda make sure we bring it out there.
Just remember, you were elected by the people to do what the people.
So then, again, put dots on community engagement if that's where you feel like we should be spending a lot of our time. All right, so does everybody understand the exercise? Take your dots, put them on these topics, there, and there, however you want, to show us your prioritization of what should be part of the master plan process. What's most important to you.
Go.
Very good.
Ready, set, go.
Megan, can we give some people, our audience,
I'm
some
sitting here looking at it, I'm thinking it's just a yellow piece of paper, what they want me to do, write on it?
It was like a good old boy. I think it's good. I like that idea.
I was red. She
No,
started
good.
crying. I said,
Oh, I
"Oh,
don't know why I got blue. Some opposite color.
This is what I was gonna drive here tonight. If somebody said there was gonna be a
Right there.
I know, I don't have a green one. You got any red?
Report a spelling mistake.
Yeah.
Never gonna change it.
You know what that's like?
Or throw it out and start over. Right.
Spelling error?
I was doing a class with about your luck on that. I spelled separate the same way and somebody corrected me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no call for projects 2024.
You know, and it was probably 40 years ago and I still remember.
You still cling to it?
Like, oh, God.
Oh, you're not
Infrastructure should come out.
London, do you want mine?
Hey, Mateo, can I get like 4?
maybe 3 or 4 more minutes just for if anybody needs to use the restroom, and then we'll start back in just a bit.
There was a limit on the time for this building.
We have to talk
And I can look out my front
All right,
window.
kids, let's,
Grade point average.
we're gonna get back to,
Across the street.
everybody,
Behind me.
we're gonna get back to order.
Then there's a canal that runs down behind me that goes right up into.
Kinda hard to do when there's nobody can work, right?
Yeah, I know.
Jim,
As long as they don't
follow.
drive off that way, I don't care. Oh, yep, oh, shut up.
I thought I was loud enough. Thank you. Somebody's gotta be the bad guy.
So looking at how you put priorities on the topics, community engagement is the leader. And that is terrific because the foundation of any good master plan is community engagement. And I know that that was a debate at the Township Board the other day when you were looking at master plan. Based on, I just want to preface this that the Michigan Association of Planning's community engagement training, I was one of the lead authors, and I've done that training at least 5 times. This is my favorite part of planning. And looking at your community and looking at the current master plan, what I would recommend is, in terms of community engagement, number one, that you have a steering committee. Because that, to lead the community engagement, that steering committee doesn't decide what's in the plan. They decide how conversations are structured, how they're held, where they're at, in order for everybody to be met where they are. Because that's one of the hardest things in community engagement is to get people there. And a lot of times we make the mistake that it's what's convenient for us, it's really what's convenient for them. But I don't live here, Mateo doesn't live here. We come in, we're here at least twice a week.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Community
My
engagement.
My marriage.
You can come to.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, we would recommend a steering committee, because also if you, I'm just gonna ask, how many people in this leadership group are in a household where you have a senior citizen?
Where we have what?
Where you have a senior citizen in your household?
65.
65 or older.
Close.
Okay, so that's the majority of this group, right? That's not the
Pretty
majority of
much.
the population. So if this group, or any subset of this group, is making decisions about how to engage the community, you're not representing them. And so that's our main reason for recommending a steering committee. We would also, because based on, immediately, I was on your Facebook page as soon as you became my client. You have great content, you have great reach, and the social media should be part of the outreach. Also, we recommend for a township because it's big geographically and you're a big population, and also because you have younger population who are what are called digital natives as opposed to digital immigrants. That an online survey is probably your best route to get what's called private communication. So where someone can have a way to privately share what they really think. And then there's a lot of things where you get into statistical surveys, non-statistical surveys, and we can discuss that, but that statistical survey, the service that we used the last time, they're doing one right now for Orion Township for their Parks and Rec plan, and I think that was $15,000. So in order to do those well, those are expensive. We found that we can get at least 5 to 10% of the population with an online survey if we have outreach and partnership from the municipality. Also, we recommend doing things called pop-up exercises where the steering committee would then tell us where to go, where you just go to the grocery store, to an event, to something here where it's Parks and Rec, where there's a lot of people, and just ask some simple questions about the township. We also recommend focus groups, where if there are specific groups that you want to talk to that are hard to reach, again, you go to them, figure out, a lot of times those are seniors, and going to senior center events. or perhaps pickleball. Also, we found that you do need a community workshop in community engagement, because at some point in time, as a community, you're making decisions. And the internet is not the right place to make decisions. The right place to make decisions is with people in a room. So the idea is that you build enough engagement that when you come to the time that have to make decisions, that people will come and participate, and you give them ways to do that where it's easy for them, or maybe what you have are 3 different events where people can come in at different times. I know that we had given you a kind of a small, medium, and large before, and that large or the really expansive public engagement with charrettes and whatnot, we typically only do for either a community like City of Howell, where we could know that it was, where we could have something where people would come all the time, and we knew that we could have more city residents than township residents. We had a charrette there a year and a half ago, a year ago in the downtown. But with the only time we've done that level of engagement was for Ypsilanti Township, and that was, they wanted to completely rehaul their master plan. I mean, it was, they stripped it down to the bare bones, and it was completely rewritten. And also, and I was I was one of the managers of that process, and I don't see the same circumstance here that I saw there. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you need that umpteenth level of 2 charrettes and having its own web page and variety. I feel like that medium one is what I would recommend, but it's up to the township board. So next steps, our recommendation was that comprehensive update, so that was that middle one that in the memo that we gave you, and then the next step is for the township board to make a decision. I know that was on your agenda tonight. Yes.
Steering committee, how many members and what kind of a makeup are you looking?
Typically, that group is anywhere between 7 to 15 people, and the makeup, it should be representative of the community. Yes.
Can you tell me what the price would be for the comprehensive update, like that we have to put on a price not to exceed?
Yeah, so that would be anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000.
Margie, which one was that, Margie?
Pass that down. It's got the 3.
Okay. So, yeah.
Was that for the content for the webpage, $40,000-$50,000? Just a copy.
Jim?
Historically, based on your experience, online surveys, how much engagement as a percentage of population? How much do you see?
We've seen anywhere between 2% to 10%. And, if it's a statistically valid survey, they look for 10% of the population. That's their gold standard. And then when we've done that also, like, when we've done statistically valid, we've gotten pushback. When we've done the online survey, we've gotten pushback because both have flaws and both have pros. And so, what we would do is work with the steering committee to say, what's the target with the online survey when it's not statistically valid? We say, what's your target? And then what we do is we track every week how many people are responding, and then we'll work with the township staff or whoever's helping with advertising for the survey to make sure we're reaching those populations. So for instance, City of Berkeley's master plan, we had an online survey. It was actually during COVID. We noticed that we were not getting a lot of seniors. So what we did is, working with staff, got an email blast out to everybody from their senior center on the list, and they requested, and their planner, God bless her, hand-delivered paper surveys to anyone who requested them. And so that was a half day of her time to go and do that. But we will track it, and if we're not hitting certain demographics, we'll make sure that we take actions in order to get there. And then also, we've expanded windows when we haven't been reaching, typically we have it open for a month, but if we get at 2.5 weeks and we don't have enough people responding, we know we need to pivot in some way, and then we would typically expand that window for response.
Rod, you had a question?
Yeah, I want to make a motion here. I move to authorize Carlisle Wortman Associates Incorporated to proceed with a comprehensive update of the current master plan at a cost not to exceed $50,000. This $50,000 amount is to be expensed to general fund account 101-701-801-001, Planner Professional Services Master Plan.
Okay.
Oh, I have a motion by trustee Charles and a second by trustee Payne. Are there any questions? Board members, any questions? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Colvin.
Yes.
Trustee Charles.
Yes.
Trustee Noel.
Yes.
Trustee Payne.
Yes.
Treasurer Ferrari.
Yes.
Clerk Wright, yes, and Supervisor Curtis.
Yes. Okay, we have our motion at the decision level for a comprehensive master plan to start. The next thing here is public comment. Now, is there any members of the public that would like to comment? Stand up and you can state your name or come on up to the mic so we can hear you and see you, please. Thank you.
My name is Joe Huber, and I'm from the Willow Lake subdivision. And first, I'd just like to say I totally agree the master plan is one of the most important things for our community as a whole. But I'm 100% in favor of doing the survey. And in doing the survey, I have a recommendation that you contact whatever subdivision board leaders and tell them to make sure they get the word out to people living in the subdivisions, how important it is to fill out the survey because it affects everybody. And for you people on the boards here, every decision that you make affects somebody in this community, either for the good or for the bad. And everybody can't be happy, but it's going to affect everybody one way or the other. So very important, I think, that we get out as much information as possible and for people to comment. And when you structure your survey, with all the things that you think that are important, and then leave a section at the bottom for the comment from the people, what they feel and what they want to see. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public want to comment? Seeing none. Next steps, and a thank you from Supervisor Curtis. How about that? Number one, I think the next step is we need to appoint a committee. The second challenge would be is to produce a timeline with placeholders for where accomplishments should be done so that we can complete this task before the end of 2024. And the third step would be engage, ASAP. We had some comments about community engagement. We have a very lucrative pool of people to tap, and it wouldn't behoove us to put up a stand at a football game. We mentioned that at the last master plan meeting in 2018. Why can't we put a booth up there and say, we're doing the master plan, fill this survey out. You'll get 7,000 people Friday night.
I have no pride, I'll go anywhere.
Okay, so,
Tomorrow night.
other than that, we need to engage. Thank you, Carlisle Watson, for providing supper tonight. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Thank you, public, for coming out. You will have more than this opportunity by far. This was not meant for public input at this time because we had to decide that we're going to do a master plan, we're going to engage Carlisle Wortman, and we're gonna spend this much money, and we're gonna do all of these areas that we talked about in the master plan. Item 12, adjournment.
Yeah, Township Board, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion by Treasurer Ferrari, a second by Trustee Payne. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, hearing none. Planning Commission.
Does somebody want to make a motion? We don't have to have a motion.
Tonight you do.
We're
not going home.
I'll wait for a motion. I'll make a motion, we adjourn. I have a motion by Al, seconded by Mr. Nolan, to adjourn this meeting tonight. All in favor, say aye. Thank you.
12C, Zoning Board of Appeals.
I make a motion to adjourn the ZBA.
I'll second.
Motion in a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much. I know this was well, you guys in the Planning Commission.